Hey guys, what's going on? I'm back for another Netflix review, and today I'm going to be talking about Munich, The Edge of War. Munich, The Edge of War is a British war drama based on the novel Munich, which recounts and dramatizes events surrounding the Munich Agreement that took place in 1938 to settle the Sudetenland issue. The story primarily focuses on two characters, a Brit named Hugh Leggett and a German named Paul von Hartmann. Hugh works as a diplomat for Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain and travels to Munich along with the Prime Minister under instruction from his superiors to obtain a secret document from Paul, who works as a press secretary, in the hopes that it will provide a strategic advantage for Britain in the event of a declaration of war. There's a lot of details to unpack just based on this premise alone, so for the sake of simplicity, I'll mostly be focusing on its overall quality as a movie and not as much on whether or not it's historically accurate. To start, the duality of its story was well balanced thanks to the performances of its two leads. George McKay plays the role of Hugh Leggett and does a great job at doing so. He's a man who has a lot of pressure placed on him due to the demands of his job and not being able to confide with his family on the nature of his work. This is revealed within minutes of the movie starting, so he's sympathetic almost immediately. By himself, he's a typical protagonist that is likable, but doesn't have much development at first. He has a wife and son who he loves dearly, but they're not featured in the movie enough to flesh out this aspect of his character. It's a missed opportunity that could have added more tension to the story. He becomes more interesting when he's eventually paired up with his old friend Paul, who he used to go to Oxford with. He's played by Janus Niewanner and is a good character in his own right. He's a German who operates as part of a resistance movement, and I enjoyed seeing him being portrayed as a man who's dedicated to his country, but not to his leader. As with Hugh, Paul is likable, but doesn't grow much as a character until the history between him and his friend are explored. He has a relationship of sorts with a female character like Hugh that doesn't add much to the movie, but it at least explains Paul's motivations to a certain degree. Once the movie gets into Hugh and Paul's history, that's when the story really kicks off. Flashback scenes add context as to why they ended up going and staying their separate ways, owing to political differences that the two had with each other regarding Hitler's rise to power. It's a believable way of showing how quickly a rift can occur between two people, and both sides are justified in their reactions within the right context, with Hugh being appalled by Hitler's beliefs and Paul supporting him, at least in the beginning. This lingering tension continues when the two meet again later on. Hugh feels that more dialogue is necessary to prevent a war, while Paul, now opposed to Hitler, feels that taking action is inevitable. Even though the two have reconciled in some fashion, their differing opinions help maintain suspense throughout the story. And this was by far my favorite part about the movie. I did not expect it to turn out to be as much of a thriller as it did. Between the espionage elements where Hugh and Paul have to smuggle the document together, to the brewing tension between Allied and Axis forces, I frequently found myself on the edge of my seat. Seeing Hugh being thrust into the role of a spy of sorts was a bit of a jarring experience, but it makes sense because he isn't trained for this type of task, yet his old friend's role in the Munich conference forces him to commit. This helped me stay invested in his character, especially in knowing that he was in way over his head. The threat of war is something that looms in the background. Even though we all know that it will happen eventually, the anticipation of this event is communicated effectively thanks to the reactions of characters and its attention to detail with its aesthetic presentation. Everything in the movie looks gorgeous, as if the 1930s came back to life in film form. The costume designs, the wartime props, and the visual look of its European settings all contributed to creating a bleak atmosphere, accentuated further by ongoing political turmoil. And it's at this point I have to mention Jeremy Irons' performance as Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain. He does an amazing job at communicating the pressures associated with his job at the time as he tries to cooperate with Hitler in order to keep the peace, and makes for a good beacon of positivity amidst the dire situation that Hugh and Paul are involved in. Hitler's portrayal, on the other hand, didn't quite work for me. I didn't even realize that he was Hitler at first until I saw his mustache, and his actor just looks too old for the role. His performance is solid enough, but when compared to how well Irons pulls off Chamberlain, it's a bit of a disappointment. Nevertheless, it was interesting to see how both sides' perspectives were interpreted. It was never clear as to whether Chamberlain or Hitler was outwitted by the other, but I still enjoyed the mental jousting between them and their parties. This being said, I found it a bit weird that we didn't hear more international opinions regarding the Sudetenland issue. Even though the French and Italians are technically present in Munich, they barely play a role in the film's events, and the people of Czechoslovakia, where the Sudetenland is located, are completely ignored. For such a significant event in world history, I thought it was strange to not see more opposition addition from the Czech perspective. Again, I don't know how historically accurate the story is, but I feel that showing the consequences of ceding the Sudetenland to Germany would have added more emotional weight to its narrative. One thing that I am glad was shown, though, was how it humanized the German characters outside of Hitler and his cabinet. Not every German was a supporter of Hitler's ideals, and I liked how Paul's resistance was built up with members from various walks of life, so in this sense there was some level of emotional weight to the story. On a related note, there's also a Nazi soldier played by August Diehl, who I recognize from another movie, Inglourious Basterds. While his acting is a little over the top, it was refreshing to see a Nazi that actually had some level of emotional depth, with him having a friendship with Paul and it becoming a point of contention later on. I could see some taking issue with it being overly focused on the political realities of the war, but I didn't mind it so much. For me, it was intriguing to see the conflict in a sort of behind-the-scenes manner, with leaders from multiple sides at odds with each other, yet still able to have conversations with one another like mature adults. Hope is a running theme that's present throughout the movie, between spoken dialogue and shared sentiments between characters, and it's conveyed very well. There's more than likely a fair bit of historical revisionism involved, but in my view it helps with the movie's presentation as opposed to hindering it. Overall, Munich the Edge of War is an enjoyable film with thriller-esque aspects that will keep most audiences entertained, while adding dramatic weight to the story with the duality of its lead characters. If you're looking for a war-themed drama that doesn't focus on the conflict of war itself, but rather the build-up to it, and don't mind a bunch of political exposition, I think you'd enjoy this movie. It has a few flaws relating to its characters, and some more emotional resonance to its key event would be appreciated, but it still remained a thrilling and satisfying experience, with The Edge of War itself providing a noteworthy look into what life was like before war and hinting at the evil that was to come. What did you think about this movie? Did you enjoy its more political approach to the story, or was it too boring for your taste? Let me know in the comments below. Anyways guys, that's going to wrap up my review of Munich the Edge of War. Thanks for watching this video, I hope you enjoyed it, and as always stay tuned for the next part, where next time I review the Turkish drama, My Father's Violin. Bye bye!